The 90s were an interesting time. Music, films, and football, but in particular the football shirts. The colours, the patterns, the sponsors. Was this the golden era? So let's take a look at why 90s football shirts were so insane. Look, it's not a secret, 90s football shirts are so popular nowadays. Whether that's the grey Inter Milan kits, the Man United Umbro kits, or Fiorentina's random collection of different sponsors. You'll see them everywhere, and there's a reason for that. And I say the main reason is creativity. Personally, I think creativity was at an all-time high during the 1990s. And let's just say, that's not always good. I mean, for example, let's look at the keeper kits. Bloody hell, I love the intent, but good lord, the execution of some of these kids. There's that whole psychology around goalkeeper kits and that they need to be bright because subconsciously, when the striker is in the moment, he's going to want to shoot the ball and hit the bright colour. I heard Petr Cech say that one day in the 2000s, and it's the story I'm sticking to. But come on guys, some of this just went too far. How can you put a keeper like Neville Southall in some of these shirts? I even love that you had some of the most iconic England shirts in Euro 96, and then David Seaman walks out at Wembley in this. I mean, another example, Shaka Hislop for Newcastle. Again, I love the intent, but when it's too much, too much. Goalkeepers are seen as outcasts a lot. You'll hear in a lot of interviews, they have their own little community, don't they? And if there's anything that will separate a team to their goalkeeper, it's some of these designs. What about Mexico though? I mean, Mexico was insane though, that was a different level. I mean, if Jorge Campos choosing fluorescent colours because it reminded him of surfing in Mexico isn't just pure 90s, then I don't know what is. In the 80s, especially in England, kits were getting sponsored more and more. In the 70s, you won't have seen many sponsors on the front of shirts, but as the money started coming into the English game more, you saw more sponsors. But then in the 90s, that is when the money exploded into the game. One, in England, the epidemic of hooliganism, it was getting sorted out more and more, and people were going to the games less in casual clothing. A lot of people were going to the games in replica shirts. So this gave designers the task of making these shirts more fashionable, because it wasn't just people wearing them down the park on a Saturday, it was people wearing to the pub with some jeans and trainers. And I like to say, I don't believe that always worked, because let's take a look at the Hull City Tigers shirt. I mean, you can't wear that to the pub, can you? But on a positive, you could argue one of the most iconic away kits of that era, Arsenal 1991 to 1993. That yellow kit is one of the best kits I think anyone has ever produced. It was so good that Arsenal tried to make a modern remake of it in the late 2010s, and you could tell the creativity was taking a step up because you only have to compare it to the Arsenal away kits of the 80s and the 70s. What about the Man United away shirt in the 92-93 season? Again, the start of the Premier League, so all of these companies were trying to make a huge name for themselves. It was a shirt that was trying to replicate the Newton Heath shirt back in the olden days. Again, one of their most iconic away shirts, and also it's one of the first times that a club was doing a retro remake. It was also where manufacturers would be a bit more creative with some home shirts, because you see nowadays a lot of home shirts, they're fairly similar, aren't they? Because you are somewhat limited. Those colours are so sacred to so many clubs. They kind of threw that a bit out of the window in the 90s. Take a look at the Birmingham kit in the 92-93 season. West Brom, again, in the 92-93 season, got a bit giddy. I mean, even the Liverpool 1991 season, despite just having the red and white colours, it was a much different pattern that you'd saw from probably just the V-neck collar that you'd see in the 80s. Some bad ones though, because they're not all good. Oldham's third kit in the 92-93 season. I mean, in this video you'll hear the words 92-93 season a lot because that's the start of the Premier League, and people, like I say, they were trying to make a name for themselves and they were trying to be as creative as possible to get out there because it was all on Sky TV. But I don't know about this Oldham third kit. I mean, I always admire when a team in a very humble working class town in England, especially in the north, does, you know, they do a kit like this, because if you saw this maybe Brighton or Bristol, they're kind of more liberal, hip areas. Imagine walking around Oldham in this shirt. My last awful Premier League kit for the time being, 1995 Forest away kit. Again, I like the intent of having the badge on, you know, on the shirt as well, but it just kind of looks a bit like a blanket that someone's made a football shirt out of. And also, if you're going to make a pattern of a badge on a kit, at least make it look like it's professionally done. I mean, it just looks like one of the players' kids drew all over it. Let's go on to the fit, because that has been a contentious issue on this channel. The 2010s, we know my issues with the 2010s. Well, this is so far in the other direction, like you couldn't get further away. The skin tight Puma kits, they could only be a dream at this point. I feel in the 90s it was when you were a kid and your mum would buy you a school uniform and say you'd grow into it. It felt like all the footballers got told that in the 90s because it felt like they were all wearing double the size. The 99 kit from Barcelona, the home shirt, is one of the all-time great ones, celebrating 100 years of the history. It had the dates of the club on the front, the badge in the middle, it is just perfect. But why were all the players wearing like triple the size? Like, I think it looks cool, and I think it looks stylish if you're wearing it out. But just from a practicality wise, I mean, imagine how quick someone like Rivaldo would have been if he wasn't wearing pretty much a parachute on his back. The shorts also changed in the 90s because everything prior to that, it was the short shorts, wasn't it? And I love this about the old eras because the 70s, the 80s, they're seen as men, aren't they? They're seen as the really tough players, and a lot of them are for the most part. But you look back at it, and they all look like they're wearing Speedos. I believe Spurs in the 91 Cup final were one of the first teams to start wearing those baggy shorts in England, and it was a change just throughout sports in the 90s because if you look at the NBA, for example, in the 80s they were similar to football, they would wear all short shorts. Then you get to the 90s and it's just the fashion, isn't it? They start wearing more baggier shorts. So in summary with the fit, the 90s just really followed the fashion, didn't it? Baggier shorts, baggier shirts, and they look cool, but I tell you what, if it was raining really heavily, those shirts and those shorts would have been so heavy to wear. So crazy respect to those football players. The sponsors were interesting in the 90s, weren't they? Because like I say, in the 80s, they were coming in more and more, especially in England. In some other countries like Germany, Bayern Munich had a few sponsors in the late 70s. But to me, and as I always say, sponsors, they make a lot of these shirts. I think it was the golden era of sponsors. Nowadays, it's a betting site that you don't even know, it's an airline. There's not really any fun ones nowadays, is there? But in the 90s, it was all over the shop. I mean, United had Sharp, Arsenal had JVC, so pretty big companies. Aston Villa had Muller, of all people. But I like in England that a lot of clubs had sponsors that were somewhat relevant to the team in the area. This isn't the case for all of them, but a lot did. Newcastle Brown Ale, for example, sponsored Newcastle, a local brewery. Walker's Crisps sponsored Leicester because, as you guessed it, they came from Leicester. Even Dagenham Motors sponsored West Ham, and I know that's not exactly where West Ham are from, but it's pretty close. It was just a more humble time, and it's so different to nowadays where most of the sponsors and companies aren't even from the same continent, never mind the same city. But you have to admit, Newcastle Brown Ale sponsoring Newcastle in the Champions League, it was a moment in time. I mean, you look at Italy, and is this the best sponsor shirt combination ever? Pirelli and Inter Milan? A football team and a tyre manufacturer, both from the same city, were on the highest level, and it looked perfect on their shirt. Whatever happened, it just meshed so well, and it was such a sad day, I think, for Inter Milan recently when they scrapped the Pirelli sponsor and changed to a different one. I mean, you can't talk about sponsors in the 90s without mentioning Fiorentina, because they just had some cool ones, didn't they? 7-Up in the early 90s, and then Nintendo in the late 90s. It's not a coincidence why you can't find any Fiorentina retro shirts for a decent price because everyone wants them. But let's have a look at some non-Premier League classic football shirts of this era. The 97 third Barca kit, I mean that blue was just unreal. And Kappa is a manufacturer that does not get any love nowadays, but they had some really cool shirts in the 80s and 90s. And of course, the Borussia Dortmund run from 1990 to about 1998. Their home shirt run was just unmatched. You are not getting a team who had so many bangers after bangers. And the thing is, one, they were doing really well, especially in the Champions League. And two, it felt like they had the same colours every single year, but every shirt felt unique. Bayern Munich, of course, in 1991. And it's funny because this template has been used a lot. You got used with the Liverpool shirt. And I don't like modern templates because I think they have no soul in them at all. I think they're an absolute cash grab. And people say, well, isn't this one as well because this was a template? Yes, it is. However, at least it's creative. It's not just one of the modern training tops that you see where Nike just stick a badge, the Nike logo, and a different colour for whatever team it is. It was quite a interesting design by Adidas. I mean, you can really say any AC Milan shirt ever, really prior to like 2013. But the 1992 one, I think that is brilliant. It has the Scudetto badge, which looks so cool that year, and it also had Motto, which I believe was a coffee manufacturer, so again, a bit of a tie to a sponsor there. Tell you what, in these videos, we haven't really mentioned any Scottish sides, and I'd say Celtic, 97, that is unreal, that shirt, because it's the same essence kind of what I said was wrong with the Nottingham Forest shirt, that they had their badge as a pattern on the shirt. However, Celtic did it so well because it was a bit transparent, it was behind the Umbro logo, and I think it's just innovation at its finest. It looks such a clean, classic football shirt without trying to be too out there just for the sake of it. As always, before we go through the rest of the international shirts, I'm going to look at England quickly. Italia 90 to start with. Can you get much better than this? The home and the away shirt, just brilliant. But then the third shirt, is this the best England shirt ever made? I see a lot of people saying it, and you see a lot of people wearing it nowadays. It might be nostalgia for people because Italia 90, just it's so fond in people's memories. If we go to 92, very similar. Again, if it's not broke, don't fix it, but I mean, it looks very similar to Italia 90. I think this was the year that Umbro started to get a bit carried away with the goalkeeper kits, which we will eventually see in Euro 96, because I'd say Euro 96 is the best England shirt combination we've had. Home and away. I love the home shirt, but the grey away shirt, it's not just because, I mean, I wasn't born, like I say, but it's not just because it's Euro 96, it had such great feeling around the country. It's just one of the coolest England shirts I've ever seen. The middle badge on both of the shirts, as I always say, we are a middle badge channel. It was just perfect, wasn't it? Again, potentially let down by David Seaman's kit, but you can't have everything, can you? And then 1998, it was a bit different, and I'm sure for people who watched it, it brought back some bad memories with David Beckham getting sent off against Argentina. I do like it. I don't think it's one of my favourite. It doesn't really feel like an England shirt, but it is definitely not one of the worst. But we'll just finish with some international ones of this decade. West Germany, 1990. I could say this is the best football shirt ever created. I think this is the coolest design, and obviously I'm not really going to wear a West Germany shirt, however I can appreciate it so much. And the fact that they won the World Cup in it, I mean, it just makes it one of the most, if not the most iconic shirt ever created. The 98 Brazil home shirt, again, they nearly won the World Cup in that. I think it's brilliant. For the most part, most of the 90s and the 2000s, I liked Brazil's home shirts. They're very similar, a lot of them. The 94 was a bit different, and I did like the patterns on there. However, I think the 98 of this decade was just the best. It wouldn't be one of these videos without a Japanese shout out. 98 home kit, I'd say. Again, I love most of them, but I think this, the colours, the pattern, brilliant. The goalkeeper kit, however, again, they went a bit mad with this, didn't they? They got a bit giddy, and it kind of looks like what you'd wear to a school disco when you were like 12 years old. And then a quick shout out to the Irish. 1990 and 1992, the best Irish kits I think ever. I actually really like this decade's Irish kit, the most recent one, but these two, I think you can't get better. They had a great team at this point. Unfortunately, it wasn't in America in the 94 World Cup, because, well, they were brilliant there, weren't they? And they had such a good team. But I love the old Adidas logo on there. And I mean, home and away for both of them, they were just fantastic, weren't they? What were the costs of these football shirts, you ask? Well, from what I read, in 1992, it was about £30 for the average football shirt. And with inflation, that goes to about £66 today. So to be fair, it's not as cheap as I thought it was going to be. I mean, £66 still is cheaper than what we pay today. However, you'd think it would be a lot cheaper considering just the boom of football. But the good thing about the 90s is that a lot of teams release shirts for 2 seasons, so you could have the home shirt for a couple of years. And because of this, you didn't have to spend £80 every single season just to have the updated home kit. Was every shirt a home run? Definitely not. I mean, the 90s are no stranger to an absolute clanger from some of these kids. Fiorentina making one of the biggest blunders in football shirt history. Celtic away in 1991, what were they doing? There were some absolutely awful ones because I think the colour palette, it was unlimited in this era. However, I do think this is the greatest age of football kits. Creativity was at an all-time high, and limitations from the clubs and the designers seem like at an all-time low. Template kits were still quite unique. It's not like nowadays, where it genuinely looks like a training top sometimes, that they just put a different badge on. In 2026, if Adidas and Nike want to create some cool patterns and just put different colours and different badges on there, fine. But don't just do the boring one and make everyone pay so much money for it. It was also a time where these teams weren't getting taken over by oligarchs and states yet, so a lot of these sponsors, like I say, represented more local businesses for the most part. There were some huge misses, but I tell you what, if you go on any retro football shirt site, I guarantee the majority of them will probably be from the 1990s. But let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of football shirts during this decade. Were they insane? Am I just getting nostalgic? I mean, for one, I wasn't born in this era, so I don't really know how I can get that nostalgic. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel. But thanks for watching.